My wife is going to love this. I smiled to myself as I adjusted the last candle on the dining table. 7 years. 7 years of marriage. 7 years of building a home together. 7 years of believing that no matter how busy life became, today would always belong to us. I checked the roast in the oven one more time. Perfect. The potatoes were ready. The wine was breathing. The chocolate cake sat in the refrigerator with clumsy white icing that read, "Happy anniversary, Liv." I laughed quietly. I really should leave decorating to professionals. There were balloons in the living room, fresh flowers on the table, and a tiny wrapped gift beside her plate. Inside the box was the necklace she'd admired through a jewelry store window 2 months earlier. She'd said, "It's beautiful, but it's too expensive." I had smiled. "You deserve beautiful things." She never knew I went back the next day and bought it. I looked at the clock. 6 o'clock. She'll be here any minute. I straightened my tie. It was the navy blue suit Olivia once said made me look handsome. "You should wear this more often," she'd laughed back then. "It makes me want to flirt with my own husband." I remember blushing. Tonight, I wanted to hear her say it again. 6:30. I picked up my phone. No messages. I called. Straight to voicemail. "Probably driving," I whispered. 7 o'clock. The candles were burning lower. The food was cooling. I called again. Nothing. At 7:15, my phone buzzed. I smiled immediately. Finally, the smile disappeared as soon as I opened the message. Asterisk emergency. Don't wait for me. Asterisk. That was it. 4 words. No explanation. No apology. I stared at the screen. Emergency? I called her again. No answer. I typed back. "Are you okay?" No reply. I tried again. "Do you need me?" Still nothing. I lowered the phone and looked around the dining room. Everything suddenly felt too quiet. The flowers. The candles. The empty chair across from mine. I forced myself to eat a few bites. The food tasted like cardboard. By 8:30, I gave up. I packed everything into containers and turned off the candles one by one. The silence in the house felt heavier with every passing minute. I sat on the couch. Maybe it really is an emergency. I want to believe that. I needed to believe it. Around 10 o'clock, my phone vibrated again. Not a message from Olivia. A social media notification. One of my old college friends had tagged several people in photos from a charity event downtown. I wasn't interested. I almost ignored it. Instead, I opened the album absent-mindedly. I scrolled through smiling faces. Business owners. Volunteers. Guests. Then my thumb stopped moving. Olivia. She wasn't alone. She was standing beside a man I hadn't seen in years. Ryan Brooks. Her first love. His arm rested lightly around her shoulders. She was looking at him with a smile I hadn't seen directed at me in a very long time. I kept scrolling. Another picture. They were laughing. Another. She was holding both of his hands. Another. She was hugging him tightly while he leaned close enough to whisper something into her ear. My chest tightened. I whispered his name. Ryan. I remembered everything she'd once told me. He was my first love. We were young. It didn't work out. That's all in the past. Was it? Because the woman smiling in those pictures didn't look like someone trapped in the past. She looked like someone who had found it again. I stared at the final photo until the screen dimmed. Then I locked the phone. The house felt colder than it had an hour ago. And for the first time in 7 years, I wondered whether I had been celebrating our marriage alone. The anniversary night never really ended. The next morning, Olivia acted as if nothing had happened. She walked into the kitchen, poured herself a cup of coffee, and smiled faintly. "Morning." I looked at her. "Morning." She frowned. "What? That's all you have to say?" She sighed. "Ethan, I told you there was an emergency. I saw the pictures." Her hand froze around the mug. "What pictures?" "The charity event." She looked away before answering. "Ryan needed support. You looked happy." "I was helping an old friend." I forced a smile that didn't feel real. "I spent all day preparing our anniversary." "I know. I waited for hours." "I know. And you never even apologized." She rubbed her forehead. "I'm sorry, okay?" It sounded practiced, not heartfelt. I wanted to believe her, but something inside me had already begun to crack. Over the following weeks, the same conversation happened again and again. "I'm having dinner with Ryan. We're meeting investors. He needs advice. It's only temporary." Every excuse sounded reasonable on its own. Together, they became impossible to ignore. One Friday evening, I called her. She declined to call. I tried again. Nothing. An hour later, she finally texted. Busy. That single word hurt more than an argument. I whispered to myself, busy for everyone except your husband. When she returned home, close to midnight, I was still awake. You waited up? I want to see my wife. You could have gone to bed. I can have. She set her purse down. Ryan's company is finally getting another chance. I laughed quietly. I've heard more about Ryan's business this month than about our marriage. Don't start. I'm trying to save what's left. She looked tired rather than guilty. I don't have the energy for this tonight. She walked past me and disappeared into our bedroom. I remained in the living room, listening to the silence she left behind. A few days later, I attended a small family dinner at her parents' house. Everyone chatted normally. Only Emma kept glancing at me. As I carried empty plates into the kitchen, she followed me. Ethan, yeah. Can we talk? Of course. She lowered her voice. I don't think my sister deserves you anymore. I blinked. What makes you say that? I have eyes. It's complicated. No. She shook her head. It isn't. I tried to laugh. You sound dramatic. I'm serious. She folded her arms. You always show up. I try. You remember birthdays. I like making people happy. You help Mom whenever she calls. I don't mind. You treat Olivia like she's the most important person in your world. She is. Emma's eyes filled with disappointment. I don't think she sees you the same way anymore. I had no answer. She reached over and squeezed my shoulder. I'm sorry. I smiled anyway. Don't worry about us. But after I drove home, her words stayed with me. They echoed louder every day. The following Monday, Daniel Reed walked into my office carrying 2 cups of coffee. You look terrible. Thanks. I'm serious. I didn't sleep much. He placed a cup in front of me. Tell me. It's nothing. Ethan. I looked out the window. I think I'm losing my wife. He stayed quiet for several seconds. Then he asked, do you think she's fighting to keep you? I didn't answer. He nodded slowly. That's what I thought. I rubbed my face. I keep telling myself things will go back to normal. And if they don't, I don't know. Daniel leaned forward. You're carrying everyone else's happiness while nobody carries yours. His words landed harder than he realized. No one had ever said that to me before. That evening, I decided to surprise Olivia by stopping near Ryan's new office. I told myself I was only picking her up. Nothing more. As I parked across the street, I saw them leaving together. Ryan laughed. Olivia laughed with him. He opened the passenger door of his car for her. She smiled in a way I hadn't seen for months. I stepped out before I could change my mind. Olivia. She turned immediately. Ethan, what are you doing here? I came to take my wife home. Ryan smiled politely. We were just discussing business. I looked at him. Then business is finished. He didn't move. Instead, he looked at Olivia. You coming? For one painful second, she hesitated. That hesitation told me everything. On the drive home, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. Do you still love him? She stared through the windshield. This isn't about choosing between you. Then answer me. She closed her eyes. Ryan was my first love. I tightened my grip on the steering wheel. You'll never understand what that means. Something inside me went completely still. I realized I wasn't fighting another man. I was fighting a place in her heart that I had never been allowed to enter. And for the first time, I wondered whether I had always been her husband, but only ever her second choice. After that drive home, something changed inside me. I stopped asking where Olivia was going. I stopped asking when she would be home. I stopped asking whether we could fix us. The answers were already there. I just hadn't wanted to hear them. One evening, she walked past me with her purse over her shoulder. I'm heading out. With Ryan? She didn't even deny it. We have another meeting. I nodded. Have a good night. She paused at the door, almost surprised that I wasn't arguing. That's it. What else is there to say? She stared at me for a second before leaving. The front door clicked shut. The silence felt strangely peaceful. A week later, I had a lunch meeting downtown with a supplier. The restaurant was crowded, so I waited near the entrance while the hostess checked for my reservation. As I looked across the dining room, my eyes stopped on a familiar face. Olivia. She sat across from Ryan. He was smiling. She was smiling back. Then he reached across the table, and took her hand. She didn't pull away. Instead, her fingers closed around his. I couldn't hear what they were saying. I didn't need to. Everything I had been refusing to believe was sitting right in front of me. For a moment, I thought about walking over. I imagined asking, "Am I interrupting my wife's date?" I imagined Ryan letting go. I imagined Olivia trying to explain. Then I realized something. No explanation would change what I was seeing. I turned around before either of them noticed me. I walked out of the restaurant. Each step felt heavy, but strangely certain. By the time I reached my car, my hands had stopped shaking. I whispered to myself, "I'm done." That afternoon, I drove straight to a lawyer's office. The receptionist smiled politely. "How can we help you today?" "I'd like to file for divorce." Saying the words hurt, but they also made me feel like I could finally breathe. That evening, I arrived home before Olivia. The lawyer had already prepared the initial paperwork. I placed the envelope in the center of the dining table, the same table where I had once set candles and flowers for our anniversary. Around 9 o'clock, the front door opened. Olivia walked in, humming softly. "You're still awake?" "I've been waiting." She noticed the envelope. "What's this?" "Open it." She frowned but sat down. As she read the first page, a laugh escaped her. "You can't be serious." "I'm serious." She pushed the papers toward me. "You're bluffing." I met her eyes without raising my voice. "No." She folded her arms. "You'll calm down tomorrow." "I won't. You always forgive me." "I know. So why are we pretending?" "We're not pretending anymore." She leaned back in her chair. "Ethan, you've threatened to leave before." "I never threatened. I knew you'd stay." I nodded slowly. "That's exactly why this happened." She looked confused. "What does that mean?" "It means you stopped believing I had limits." Her smile faded. "You won't actually leave." "I already have. You live here." "My body does." I placed my hand over my chest. "My heart left a long time ago." She looked away. "We could talk about this later." "I've been trying to talk for months." "I've been busy." "With Ryan." She didn't answer. The silence answered for her. She slid the papers back across the table. "I'm not signing." "Why?" "Because you'll wait." "No." "You always wait." "Not anymore." She stood up. "You'll change your mind." I looked at the envelope between us. "No." "I'm finally choosing myself." Without another word, she walked into our bedroom and closed the door. The next morning, I left early for work. As I stepped outside, my elderly neighbor, Mrs. Helen Grant, was watering the flowers along the sidewalk. She smiled gently. "Morning, Ethan." "Morning." She studied my face. "You've been carrying something heavy." I forced a small smile. "I'm not hiding it very well." "No." She set the watering can down. "I watched you two for years." I stayed quiet. She continued softly. "You always looked at your wife." I nodded, but she stopped looking back. My throat tightened. I tried. "I know. I thought loving someone meant never giving up." Mrs. Grant reached over and squeezed my arm. "Love isn't proven by suffering forever." I lowered my eyes. Those words settled deep inside me. For years, I had confused endurance with devotion. I had believed staying was proof of love. Standing there in the morning sunlight, I finally understood something different. Sometimes the bravest way to love yourself is to let go of the person who already let go of you. The house felt different after Olivia moved out. It wasn't quieter. It was honest. There were no unanswered questions hanging in the air. No late-night excuses. No empty promises waiting for tomorrow. For the first time in months, I woke up without checking my phone to see if my wife had bothered to answer my messages. The realization hurt, but it also felt like breathing after holding my breath for too long. I buried myself in work. If I wasn't at the office, I was reviewing contracts at home. If I wasn't reading reports, I was reorganizing rooms that suddenly felt too large for one person. Daniel noticed before I did. He dropped into my office one afternoon, carrying 2 coffees. "You've become allergic to weekends." I smiled faintly. "They're overrated." "No." He sat across from me. "You're hiding." "I'm working." "You're hiding behind work." "I need something to keep my mind busy." "You need people." "I'm not ready." He leaned back in his chair. "Good." I frowned. "Good. If you were ready already, I'd know you were pretending." I laughed for the first time in days. "You always know what to say. I've had years of practice dealing with you." He pulled an envelope from his jacket. "What's that?" "A charity gala." "I don't do galas." You do now. I slid it back toward him. No. He pushed it toward me again. Go. I'm not interested. It's for children's education. I'll donate. They need donors. I'll write a bigger check. They also need guests. I sighed. Daniel. He folded his arms. One evening. I hate crowds. You hate memories. I looked away. He had caught me again. You don't have to meet anyone, he continued. Just stop sitting alone every night. After several seconds, I nodded. Fine. He grinned. I knew you'd surrender eventually. I agreed. Same thing. 2 nights later, I adjusted my tie outside the ballroom entrance. You can still leave, I muttered. Before I could turn around, Daniel appeared beside me. I heard that. You were supposed to be inside. I came to make sure you didn't escape. I was considering it. I know. He placed a hand on my shoulder. Trust me. The ballroom buzzed with conversation. People laughed. Music drifted softly through the room. I accepted a glass of sparkling water and stayed near the edge, hoping nobody would notice me. Not a fan of parties? The voice came from beside me. I turned. A woman stood there wearing a dark blue dress and a warm smile. I guess it shows. A little. I'm Ethan. Sophia. She offered her hand. I shook it. I'm Sophia Bennett. Nice to meet you. You look like someone counting the minutes until he can leave. I smiled. Am I that obvious? Only because I usually do the same thing. That surprised me. I design buildings. I'm in business. So we're both pretending to enjoy networking. I think you figure me out. She laughed softly. The conversation flowed without effort. She asked about my company. She listened carefully instead of waiting for her turn to speak. When I mentioned enjoying old bookstores, she smiled. I thought I was the only person left who still buys paper books. You read? Every Sunday. What kind? Anything that reminds me people survive difficult things. There was something familiar about that answer. Something honest. I asked gently, You've been through difficult things? She nodded. My fiancé died in a car accident 4 years ago. I'm sorry. Thank you. She smiled, though sadness lingered behind it. It took me a long time to understand that moving forward isn't the same as forgetting. I looked down at my untouched wedding ring. Without thinking, I began turning around my finger. Sophia noticed. She didn't ask questions immediately. Instead, she waited. Finally, she said, You're separated? I filed for divorce. I'm sorry. I thought I'd spend my whole life with one person. So did I. For a few seconds, neither of us spoke. The silence wasn't uncomfortable. It felt understood. Her eyes drifted toward my ring again. You don't have to throw it away today. I looked at her. Then she smiled gently. When your heart decides. Those words settled somewhere deep inside me. There was no pressure, no judgment, only patience. It was the first time in months that someone had spoken to me without demanding anything in return. As the evening ended, she reached into her purse and handed me a small card. If you ever want recommendations for good bookstores. I smiled. I'd like that. Walking to my car, I realized something had changed. I wasn't healed, not even close. But for the first time since my marriage fell apart, I had spent an evening talking to someone who truly listened. And somehow, that felt like the beginning of a different life. The weeks after the charity gala passed quietly. I didn't chase happiness. I simply stopped running from it. Sophia and I started meeting every Saturday morning at the same little bookstore downtown. She always arrived 5 minutes early. She always carried coffee. And somehow, she always remembered the smallest things. You still take your coffee without sugar, she said one morning as she handed me a cup. I smiled. You remembered. You mentioned it once. I laughed. That's impressive. No. She shrugged. I just listened. That simple sentence stayed with me the entire day. Nobody had listened to me like that in years. We wandered through the bookstore together. She pulled a novel from a shelf. You like this one? You've read it 3 times. That good. It reminds people that broken things don't stay broken forever. I looked at her. You're always trying to give people hope. She smiled gently. I only offer it. And if they refuse, I wait. There was never pressure in her voice. Never expectations. She walked beside me instead of pulling me forward. For the first time since my marriage had fallen apart, I felt understood without having to explain every scar. A few days later, my phone rang while I was finishing paperwork. The screen showed Emma's name. Hello. Ethan. Her voice sounded shaky. Are you busy? I can make time. Can we meet? An hour later, we sat in a quiet cafe. She looked exhausted. Dark circles rested beneath her eyes. What happened? I asked. She stared at the table before answering. It's Ryan. I stayed silent. He isn't who everyone thought he was. What do you mean? She took a slow breath. My sister found bank transfers. Transfers? He moved money from her savings into several accounts. I frowned. Did she authorize them? Emma shook her head. No. How much? I don't even think she knows yet. I leaned back in my chair. What did Ryan say? Emma gave a bitter laugh. She confronted him. What happened? He didn't deny it. I looked at her in disbelief. He actually admitted it. He was angry that she questioned him. Emma swallowed hard. He shouted at her. What did he say? She closed her eyes for a moment. He told her. Her voice cracked. He told her, you owe me after leaving me years ago. I felt my jaw tighten. So that's what all of this was about. Emma nodded. He never wanted her. He wanted what she could give him. Tears filled her eyes. I kept hoping she'd realize it before everything fell apart. I reached across the table. This isn't your fault. She wiped her eyes. I should have spoken sooner. You tried. No. She shook her head. I stayed quiet because I thought she'd wake up before losing everything. Her words hung between us. Neither of us needed to say what we were both thinking. It was already too late. Later that afternoon, Daniel stopped by my office. You heard? I nodded. Emma told me. He sighed. Ryan's lawyer contacted several creditors this morning. Lawyer? Michael Hayes. Daniel placed a business card on my desk. Apparently, Ryan has more financial problems than anyone realized. I looked at the name. So everything is collapsing. Looks that way. I stared through the office window. Months ago, I would have celebrated. Months ago, I would have wanted Olivia to feel exactly what she had made me feel. Instead, I only felt tired. That evening, Sophia called. How was your day? Complicated. Want to talk about it? I hesitated. Then I told her everything. She listened without interrupting. When I finished, she asked only one question. How do you feel? I thought about it. I feel sorry for the woman I used to love. And for yourself? I smiled sadly. I think I'm finally starting to forgive him. Myself. There was a quiet pause. Then she said softly, that's the hardest person to forgive. We sat together on a park bench after dinner. The sun slowly disappeared behind the trees. She didn't reach for my hand. She didn't ask where our friendship was going. She simply sat beside me. After several peaceful minutes, I spoke. Thank you. For what? For never asking me to become someone I'm not. She smiled. I like the man sitting beside me already. I laughed quietly. I don't know if I'm ready for another relationship. She nodded. I know. You aren't disappointed? No. Why? Because healing isn't a race. I looked at her, wondering how someone could be so patient. She wasn't trying to replace my past. She wasn't competing with anyone. She was simply giving me the space to become myself again. And without realizing it, my heart had already begun walking toward her long before I admitted it. The day my divorce became official, I didn't celebrate. I walked out of the courthouse holding a single envelope. 7 years of marriage had been reduced to a few signatures and a stamped document. Daniel waited beside his car. How do you feel? I looked at the envelope. Lighter. Happy. I thought for a moment. No. Sad. Not anymore. He smiled. Then you're finally free. I nodded. I think I am. Instead of going back to the office, I drove to the Riverside Park where Sophia and I had spent countless evenings talking about everything except the future. She was already sitting on our favorite bench with 2 cups of coffee. She looked up and smiled. You're late. I had one last appointment. She noticed the envelope in my hand. It's finished. It's finished. She stood and wrapped her arms around me without saying another word. I closed my eyes. For the first time in a long time, silence felt comforting instead of lonely. After a few minutes, she stepped back. So, what happens now? I reached into my jacket pocket. I was hoping you'd help me answer that. Her eyebrows lifted. What do you mean? I pulled out a small velvet box. Her eyes widened. Sophia, I took a slow breath. I've spent months wondering whether I deserved another chance at love. She remained perfectly still. I kept thinking about everything I've lost. I smiled softly. Then I realized something. What? I wasn't thinking about what I lost anymore. I opened the box. I was thinking about what I'd found. Tears gathered in her eyes. I looked directly at her. Sophia Bennett. My voice shook. Will you marry me? She covered her mouth. For several seconds, she couldn't speak. Finally, she whispered, Ethan. A tear rolled down her cheek. Are you sure you're not choosing me because you're hurting? I gently took her hand. No. Another tear escaped. I'm choosing you because you helped me heal. She smiled through her tears. I never wanted to replace your past. You never tried. I only wanted to stand beside you. You already have. She laughed softly. Then, she nodded. Yes. I slipped the ring onto her finger. She looked at it before looking back at me. It's beautiful. So are you. She laughed again. I've waited a long time to hear someone say that. I kissed her forehead. And I've waited a long time to mean it without pain. The months that followed were peaceful. Neither of us wanted a grand celebration. Sophia suggested a small wedding. Just family. And close friends, I added. She smiled. Perfect. Daniel volunteered to organize the reception. Emma quietly offered to help with the flowers. Mrs. Helen insisted on baking the wedding cake herself. It may not look perfect, she warned. I laughed. Neither do we. Exactly, she replied. That's why it'll taste better. As invitations were mailed, I never thought about Olivia. There was no reason to. Our lives had become separate paths. Then one afternoon, my office door burst open. Olivia stood there holding a cream-colored envelope. Her hands were trembling. I immediately recognized it. The wedding invitation. She stared at me as if she didn't recognize the man standing before her. This, her voice cracked. Is this real? Yes. You're getting married? Yes. She shook her head. No. I stayed calm. You can't marry someone else. I looked at her quietly. Why? She opened her mouth. Nothing came out. I waited. She tried again. You. Her eyes filled with tears. You were supposed to. She couldn't finish. I asked once more. Why? She looked down at the invitation. I didn't think. What? I didn't think you'd actually leave. The room became silent. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I said, I waited for you. She nodded weakly. I know. I begged you to choose us. Another nod. I know. You kept believing I'd always be there. She closed her eyes. I know. I took a slow breath. But I'm not anymore. She looked at the engagement ring on my hand. You really love her? A smile appeared before I could stop it. Yes. And she loves you? She does. Olivia lowered her head. I waited. I thought there would always be time. I felt sadness for her, but not regret. You chose your path. A tear landed on the invitation she still held. I never imagined you'd stop waiting. I finally realized I deserved someone who didn't ask me to. She stood there for another moment. Then she quietly turned toward the door. As she reached it, she whispered, I'm sorry. This time I believed she meant it. But the apology no longer had the power to change my future. After she left, I looked out the window and smiled. For the first time in years, someone wasn't walking away from me. Someone was waiting to walk beside me for the rest of my life. The weeks before my wedding should have been peaceful. Instead, the past refused to let go. Daniel walked into my office, carrying a stack of contracts. You've got company. I looked up. Who is it? He hesitated. Olivia. I closed the file in front of me. Tell her I'm busy. I already did. And she said she'll wait. I sighed. 5 minutes. Daniel nodded and quietly stepped outside. A moment later, Olivia entered. She looked nothing like the confident woman who once believed I would never leave. Her eyes were tired. Her shoulders slumped. She clutched a small shopping bag against her chest. Hi, she whispered. Hi. Neither of us spoke for several seconds. Finally, she asked, How have you been? I'm doing well. She forced a smile. I'm glad. I could tell she wasn't. She placed the bag on my desk. I brought something. What is it? She pushed it toward me. I think these belong to you. I opened the bag. Inside were the birthday watch I had given her during our 2nd year of marriage, the silver bracelet from our 5th anniversary, the scarf she wore every winter, and dozens of small gifts I had forgotten buying. You kept all of these? I kept everything. I looked at the bag quietly. You don't have to return them. I do. Why? She lowered her eyes. Because every time I look at them, I remember what I threw away. The room fell silent. I'm sorry, she said. I know. I wasn't a good wife. I didn't answer. I kept waiting for you to forgive me. I already did. She looked up hopefully. Then, I forgave you. My voice stayed calm. But forgiveness isn't the same as going back. The hope disappeared from her face. She nodded slowly. I understand. She picked up her purse. I'm sorry I came. I don't regret seeing you. She gave me one last sad smile before leaving my office. That evening, when I reached my apartment, I saw someone sitting on the front steps. Olivia. She stood as soon as she saw me. I just wanted to talk. We already did. Please. I unlocked the door, but remained outside. What do you want to say? I miss you. I closed my eyes for a moment. You miss the man who always waited. She shook her head. No, you do. I miss us. There hasn't been an us for a long time. She looked like she wanted to argue. Instead, she whispered, I know. She left without another word. The next morning, Mrs. Helen was tending her roses. She watched Olivia walk away before turning toward me. She came again? Yes. Mrs. Helen sighed softly. I feel sorry for her. So do I. She rested both hands on her cane. I told her something yesterday. What did you say? She smiled sadly. I told her, you begged for your attention for years. You answered too late. I looked down. How did she react? She cried. Mrs. Helen paused. But tears cannot change yesterday. A few days later, Emma called. Ethan, have you heard? Heard what? Ryan disappeared. I frowned. What do you mean? The police and several investors have been looking for him. What happened? More fraud complaints were filed. I remember Daniel mentioning Michael Hayes weeks earlier. So the investigations were real. Emma sighed. Ryan left town without telling anyone. And Olivia? She finally understands who he really was. I stayed quiet. Emma continued. She lost the man she chased. Another pause. And she lost the husband who truly loved her. There was nothing I could say. The damage had already been done. As wedding preparations continued, Emma surprised me by offering to help Sophia choose flowers. One afternoon, she smiled awkwardly. I don't expect you to forgive my sister. I already have. I just wanted you to know. She took a slow breath. I'm done defending Ryan. You don't have to explain. I cut every connection with him. I'm glad. He destroyed enough lives. I nodded. Yes. That evening, Sophia and I walked through the small garden where we planned to hold our ceremony. She noticed I had become unusually quiet. What are you thinking about? Olivia. She slipped her hand into mine. I guessed. I don't hate her. You don't have to. I feel sad. Sophia smiled gently. That's because you're a good man. I keep wondering if things could have been different. They could have. I looked at her. But they weren't. She stopped walking and faced me. Some people become lessons instead of forever. I repeated her words silently. Lessons instead of forever. For months, I had carried anger, then disappointment, then grief. Standing beside Sophia, I finally realized I wasn't carrying any of them anymore. All I carried was gratitude, because losing the person who couldn't truly see me had led me to the woman who did. The morning of my wedding arrived quietly. There were no reporters, no grand ballroom, no expensive decorations, just a small garden filled with people who genuinely wanted to see us happy. Daniel adjusted my tie and stepped back. There. How do I look? He grinned, like a man who finally stopped surviving and started living. I laughed. You always know what to say. Mrs. Helen walked over with a warm smile. I've been waiting for this day. So have I. She straightened my jacket. Are you nervous? A little. Good. I looked at her. It means this matters. Music began playing softly. Everyone turned toward the aisle. Then I saw her. Sophia. She wasn't trying to impress anyone. She wasn't trying to prove she had won. She simply smiled at me with the same gentle kindness she had shown from the day we met. As she walked toward me, I realized something. I wasn't comparing her to Olivia. I wasn't comparing today to my wedding years ago. I wasn't carrying old memories beside new ones anymore. I was completely present. When she reached me, she whispered, "You're smiling." I can't help it. You should. She squeezed my hand. You look happy. I am. The officiant smiled. We're gathered here today His words faded into the background. I only heard Sophia's breathing. I only saw the woman who had stood beside me while I learned how to stand on my own again. When it was time for our vows, I looked into her eyes. I once believed love meant begging someone to stay. My voice trembled. You show me love can also mean feeling safe enough to stop begging. A tear slipped down her cheek. I promised to listen before I speak. I smiled. You already do. She laughed softly. I promise to stand beside you, not in front of you. I nodded. And I promise to choose you every day, not because I need someone to complete me, but because my life is better with you in it. The officiant smiled. You may kiss your bride. As I kissed Sophia, applause filled the garden. For the first time in years, my heart felt completely at peace. During the small reception, Daniel raised his glass. To second chances. Everyone smiled. Mrs. Helen added, and to knowing your worth. Emma hugged Sophia. I'm so happy for both of you. Sophia smiled warmly. So are we. Later that afternoon, while guests slowly began leaving, I stepped outside the garden gate for a moment. Across the street, I noticed a familiar figure. Olivia. She stood quietly beneath a tree. She wasn't crying. She wasn't angry. She simply watched from a distance. Our eyes met for a brief second. Neither of us moved. Neither of us spoke. Then she gave me a small, almost grateful nod. I returned it. She turned around and walked away without looking back. She didn't interrupt the wedding. She didn't ask me to change my mind. She simply accepted that my life no longer belonged to the past. Months passed. Sophia and I settled into our new home. It wasn't large. It wasn't luxurious. But every room felt warm because it was filled with honesty instead of silence. One evening Emma called. I thought you should know something. What is it? My sister started volunteering at the community center. I stayed quiet. She says helping people reminds her there's still something good she can do. I'm glad. She isn't trying to win you back anymore. I hope she finds peace. So do I. After he hung up, I stood on the back porch watching the sunset. Sophia walked outside carrying 2 mugs of tea. Penny for your thoughts? I was thinking about how strange life is. In a good way, I smiled. In the best way, she handed me a mug. You don't regret anything? I regret the pain. And the past. The past taught me what love isn't. She slipped her hand into mine. And now, I looked at the woman beside me. Now I know what love feels like. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Thank you for choosing me. I smiled and kissed her forehead. Thank you for showing me I deserve to be chosen too. We stood there together as the evening sky slowly turned gold. I didn't win because someone else lost. I didn't find happiness through revenge. Karma had taken its own course without my help. What I gained was far greater than watching someone else's downfall. I found peace. I found trust. I found a partner who listened, remembered, and stayed. And in the end, I quietly married someone better. Not because she was perfect, but because every single day she chose me with the same certainty that I chose her. That quiet choice became the greatest victory of my life.